What if we could learn from outstanding leaders in business, sports, and education from some of the best voices in corporate America? Lighting the Path is a series of interviews with industry leaders whose stories highlight strategies that build purpose-driven cultures, engage and retain top talent, develop drivers that create high-performance teams, and connect people to the vision of your company. Join us to hear from game-changing, talented leaders whose paths make a difference at work and at home.
To be able to drive.
Mike, seeing it from someone else's perspective, that opens up a whole new viewpoint, a whole new POV than just from your siloed perspective. And that comes down to how well do you know your people? Are you actually thinking? Are you thoughtful about what might be going on? And do you ask the right questions?
Yeah. So I'm hearing you say that the one of the stumbling blocks that leaders wrestle with is that they don't ask enough information. And I'm sitting there trying to think, because we've heard this before, right? You and I didn't come up with this concept. It's been out there before. So why is it still happening? Why, even though we know it, under what circumstances do you think it causes people to not use that central tech, using a technique, whatever?
There's a misnomer and misbelief that doesn't drive numbers. When in actuality, you look at it, it does drive does drive numbers, but sometimes we're short-sighted. And hey, I got to hit my number this month. I got to hit my number this quarter. I got to hit my annual number. Yes, and if you want to not just hit your number but exceed, you better invest in your people in the long run. I'll give you an example. A company I work for, Intuit. They had purchased the company, Intuit, the makers of TurboTax, QuickBooks. Right. They purchased a company I work for in the healthcare space. And they realized their true north was number one, employees, which sounds good, but in practice, they actually applied it. Number two, it was customers. Number three, it was shareholders. They knew that if they took care of their employees first, the employees are going to take care of the customers. They knew if they took care of the customers are going to take care of the shareholders. So it's having that vision and being committed to it. Hey, Mike, I know I'm not supposed to eat a ton of fried chicken, but I'm a Southern boy. I'm in North Carolina, and I don't know if you know what time it is, but it's bow time. Those fried chicken and biscuits are, they're talking to me. But my doctor said, Larry, if you want to see your daughter walk down that aisle, you better mix in a salad and cut out the fried chicken. So knowing oftentimes is not the same as doing. And I'm happy to report that I'm down 13 pounds. I'm feeling good at 207, and I got a ways to go.
I love it then, because I know that you're kind of competitive, Larry. And when you and I met, we talked earlier. This was 90 days ago. I think we first crossed our paths. Because I'm kind of competitive too. Since you brought the subject up, I'm down 15 pounds. So you got some work to do, bud. I just want you to know that, because I did the same thing. Doctor said, Mike, you've been talking about it. You're going to do something about it. And it goes back to intentional. And so I have two things. I've been diagnosed as diabetic. So now when I look at that fried chicken, or look at my cookie, I look at that and goes, my name's Mike. I'm a diabetic. It's not like I'm a 12-step program, but I have to do that to be able to drive, to be intentional if I want to make a change, and I have to drive it from the heart. I don't know why I brought this thing up, just because I'm competitive. I'm going to bust your chops a little bit.
I'm encouraging you along your journey, and thank you for sharing, because that's an inspiration to so many that you're touching and probably won't even know it.
Yeah, because the other thing that helped me, since you think that's a strong my grandfather lost a leg to diabetes. My aunt lost a leg, and my mom was chasing it. If she lived a couple more years, she'd have probably done it. And so now I go, my name is Mike. I'm a diabetic. I'm going to look at that chocolate chip cookie. If it's still kind of calling my name, I go, I like my toes. I like my toe. And I'm not going to tell you that it means that I don't eat it. But I'm telling you, instead of eating a chocolate, you go have a bite and I throw it away and I move on down the line. I'm intentional in my walk with it. And so I got to tell you that I love this energy that you've got. It's I think people can tell how infectious your message is. It's not just your persona. Larry said, I looked at that. I figured as soon as I said the word infectious, I couldn't wait to see what prop you're going to pop up. You're the only person I've met who uses props more than I do. And I appreciate, I like I like the visual aspect of it. So we got another one, Floyd. For those who are just listening or whatever, he's popped up masks and little buttons and everything else involved with it. And if you didn't know, when he talked about fried chicken, he actually had fried chicken on a keychain. I'm going to talk to you about that when we get offline. I got to find out more about that. Hey, look, we were talking about the subject about how to engage the people who work with you, because what happens is we get into our career and we drive production. And that's why we get recognized: engineers, salespeople, IT professionals, recruiters, or what have you. We scale production, and then we get moved into a management role. And the challenge we run bridging that gap is, now what happens is our productivity is not as important as our ability to influence the productivity of others. And sometimes we got to take a step back or figure out how do we engage people around a cause or what have you. So the reason I like to do this by Zoom instead of just audio is I get a chance to see eyeballs light up, and yours just twinkled there for a minute. What are you thinking?
Well, I look at the analogy of sports. Some of the greatest sportsmen and sportswomen that we've seen have struggled as leaders because they were able to do it themselves. They were able to produce at a high level. But getting others to elevate their game is a whole different story. I'll just share with you, at University of Maryland, our head coach was the opening day starter for the Giants. So you would think that our pitching staff would be one of the best. No, we were one of the worst, because although he could do it himself, actually teaching, coaching, caring about others wasn't necessarily the strongest point or strongest skill that he had. Some of the best coaches out there, some of the best leaders were not the best individual contributors. And that's because they weren't blessed with the natural skill. They had to learn. They had to dig deep. They had to be aware of the situations, and they're now able to communicate that to others, to elevate, to lift, to create a crystal clear vision of where we're going and rally the troops, metaphorically, to the goal that we're all trying to achieve. So it's fascinating when I go into organizations to see the dynamics of leadership. And we know that there's some sort of dysfunction in most organizations. I've yet to see an organization that's perfect. Anytime you have two people, there's going to be something. There's going to be some sort of rub there. Now you bring in 3 people, 5 people, 7 people, a team of 20. You're going to have some mixes and some matches within that group. It's just fascinating to see those that are able to work through those differences and come together versus those that just implode and explode.
Yeah, and what I found in that scenario is that the number one role a leader has is to bring clarity to situations and circumstances. And what you described is that as people are interacting with their teams as leaders, if you lose sight of what we're trying to accomplish, and you get too caught up in either the silos, or what was a situation we were looking at last week, they were trying to figure things out. They were spending more time talking about the blame of what was the problem as opposed to the solution to where do we go forward. They were hung there. And they were having a difficult time bridging that, moving from into say, what are the steps that we need to take in order to make something happen with that? It's a key aspect of it.
So Mike, I shared something earlier. It comes from Sam McKenna, one of my sales coaching colleagues. Show me that you know me. Mr. Steve Noodleberg in South Florida said, Larry, in my 30 years of selling, what I learned is the difference between contacts, people that we know, and contracts, people we do business with, is the letter R. That R stands for relationships. That's internal relationships, external relationships, relationships with partners, with supporters, with sponsors, with our team. And if those relationships aren't healthy, it doesn't have to be all hunky-dory, but there's got to be respect. There's got to be trust. There's got to be communication and the safety that I can communicate exactly what we need to in the spirit of getting to that crystal clear goal that we're all hopefully rowing in the same direction. Oftentimes we have people on two separate pages, one going this way, one going that way, and then we wonder why we missed the target.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't take a genius, Einstein.
Yep. And so I was waiting to see what come. I knew if I started speaking before, okay, that's what I thought then. So hang on a second, because I got to do something here real quick. I don't want to wait until the thing came out. I just did a screenshot of this. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I'm going to have fun afterwards. If you're just listening or whatever, you just saw Larry put on an Einstein wig. But I love this. Is that what happens is that what you're talking about is EQ, right? And IQ. What you just put on the Einstein wig is all about intellect. It's about intelligence. But we know the statistics point out that 85% of your success in your career as a leader, top performer, has more to do with EQ than IQ. It has to do with your ability to interact with others in a way that is productive. And we're talking about relationships and this contact and contract. Where my head went to was about, our big friend, right? The phone, sitting here. I just popped that bad boy. This is the phone because of, we use this to be in contact with people. But this is also it can be a relationship builder, but a lot of times it's a relationship breaker, isn't it? Because we rely upon this as opposed to that FaceTime. As leaders, that are trying to have impact or increase the performance of their teams, are there metrics that you've seen that Salesforce? This isn't the pitch Salesforce. There's a lot of CRM systems that are out there, but we'll use Salesforce because you know it well. Are there metrics that are measured around building relationships, KPIs?
Well, I mean, from a sales perspective or from a sales leader perspective?
Either one.
Yeah, from a sales perspective, there's of course metrics. You look at the funnel. How are you building the top of funnel? How many outreaches, whether that's phone calls, emails,
Right.
social media, handwritten notes, conferences, you name it. How many seeds are you planting out there, and are you doing it strategically? And is that converting to folks actually entering the pipeline? And then from the pipeline is velocity. How are they moving from the top of the funnel to the middle of the funnel? The middle of the funnel to hopefully close one or even close lost quickly.
Tell me about the middle. Tell me about the middle. Tell me about the middle of the funnel, because to me, the middle of the funnel is where relationships are being built, right? The funnel builder, we hear about SEO, get it into the funnel, but I don't see a lot of metrics or KPIs around relationship. Are there things that you've seen that if people just really focus on building relationships do what have you, or having conversations about, that there's merit?
Yeah, there's been a study by a company called Gong. They're a conversation intelligence. They listen to calls as well as Zooms.
That's also called the CIA. I'm sorry, different things. Too easy.
The NSA, the one that listens and not the one that's. but essentially, there was a study that they did, and there was a metric that they put out that shared if your prospect texts you, and you talked about the cell phone, if your prospect texts you, you now have an exponentially higher chance. Because you think about relationships. I don't know about you, Mike. I don't give my cell phone out to everyone. I'll do a Zoom with you. You got my email. You can send me the invite, but I'm not going to give you my cell because that's personal. Well, essentially, if you're on that level of the relationship where you got the cell communication back and forth, that's a pretty good indication that middle funnel is going to then lead to the bottom of the funnel as a close one deal, not close lost.
I'm so glad you bring this up, because what happens, especially because of the space that I spent a lot of time is in the recruiting and search industry, grew up in that space. And it's about phone time, number of outreach calls. And if I'm not making phone calls, then I'm wasting time. And that was true for the longest time. And there are people that have been at this for a while that say, well, this whole thing about texting, well, that's just a waste. Maybe I could be making phone calls. What you just told me was that text that somebody's sending back to me is just as valuable as me having a conversation with them, isn't it?
It's gold. Because think about the effort that it takes. I'm not going to text anybody, especially a sales rep, someone who's slanging software. Well, you're elevated, at least in my eyes, that you're a trusted business advisor. You're a consultant that's on my side of the table and not on your side. There's a thing in sales that's called commission breath, and it smells funky. Even a whole box of Tic Tacs can't clear that up. And that's the sales rep. I won't say sales professional, that all they care about is them. Me, 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 me. They're me monsters. Well, Bob Berg wrote a book called The Go Giver that talks about you monsters. And that's what true sales and true leadership, from my perspective, is all about. It's not about me, it's about we, and it's about you. Hey, Mike, what can I do to support you? Mike, how can I help you? Mike, how can I encourage and get the blockers out of your way so that you can get to your goals? If I'm not able to answer that, if I don't even ask the question, good luck. I'm now rolling the die, and I don't like the gamble. I like a sure shot. And I know that if I invest the time, it's not 100% guaranteed, but my percentage is raised that my people are going to be engaged. They're going to be retained. And you said it earlier, they're going to be ignited and on fire to serve me, to serve themselves, and to serve the organization. That's a win-win-win, a combination.
Yeah, so Larry, I always try to come up with a question to ask and put a cap on our conversation. I don't have to. You just did. I just that was a great way to kind of wrap up everything we talked about. Yeah, drop that mic, baby. When you look at what we've been talking about is that we really want to ignite performance. We want to be leaders that we really are the jolt. Because here's and I use this when I spoke at the NSA, Chapter Leadership Institute this past week, and chapter leaders around the country. As we wrap this thing up, you can't ignite the spark in somebody, but you sure can fan the flame, and that's our job. That's our job, and I love what you just said about this thing. So if you look for Larry's book, Jolt. You can pick that up on Amazon. And Larry, why don't you give them your website? How do they get in contact with you if they want to follow up?
Yeah, please visit me, my website, Larry Long Jr., and that's JR, LarryLongJR.com, as well as LinkedIn. I've got a pretty large presence on LinkedIn. Would love to connect, would love to engage, would love to see how I can best support you. Larry Long Jr., the man with 2 microphones on LinkedIn. I hope to see you soon.
Super. Larry, thank you so much, my friend. This has been an honor.
Honor and privilege is all mine. Thank you, Mike.
Super. Thanks for joining us today on Lighting the Path, Strategies for Tomorrow's Leaders. If anything in this podcast speaks to you, if I've challenged you, or if you want to spend time digging into this subject a little deeper, or if you disagree with me, reach out. My contact information is on our website, lightingthepath.net, or email me at mike@mikelejeune.com. Also, look for me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect our networks. Keep lighting the path for those who choose to follow you. It's more than a responsibility. It's an honor.